we got to take action early on, right? You got to keep that hopper full with the phone ringing, getting your marketing campaigns out, whether that's your email or however you do it. You guys have an unscheduled treatment list. Everybody has that. So we really should be focusing on that in the summer.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry look like to you? I'm Katie Polson, a dental hygienist and your host. Welcome to another episode of Growth in Dentistry. I am Katie Polson, and we are glad to have you on this episode on preparing for the September Slump, or as I lovingly call it, Sucktember. So we're so glad to have you. It's going to be a great episode, but before we get started, for those of you that haven't taken the opportunity, or if you're new listeners to the show, welcome. If you haven't taken the opportunity to join our Facebook Dental Intelligence Podcast community, it's a really great place to join like-minded data nerds, and we come have a fun conversation and join us there. If you haven't had an opportunity to subscribe to this podcast, you don't want to miss. We've got some awesome podcasts coming up, especially some different episodes on deep dive episodes that include a lot of practices that are in our top 10% of our practices and the way that they work. We've got some DSO or enterprise podcasts coming up. And then also, just like today, some key opinion leaders helping us kind of do some best practices. So subscribe. We'd love to have your support there. And then lastly, if you aren't a customer of ours at Dental Intelligence, we'd love to have the opportunity to give you a demo. And for those listeners to our show, we're doing a $50 gift card when you complete a demo. If you want to go to get.dentalintel.com/podcast, you'll be able to complete one there. And I'll make sure to put that link in our show notes. So without further ado, we want to welcome our guest, Heidi Mount. Welcome to the show, Heidi. So glad to have you.
Awesome. Here, I'd love to join your party. So this is great.
Yeah, it's a good party. It's been a really good day today. I had an opportunity this is my second podcast, and it's just going to keep rolling. We're going to keep going. It's been so much fun. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into dentistry, and also she's recording from Hawaii, people. So we need to know how she ended there too. So
Sounds good. Yeah. So apparently when I was 3 years old, I told my dentist I wanted to be a dentist. So when I turned 18, he asked me, so where are you going to college? What are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And showed me in the chart. She said she wanted to be a dentist at 3 years old. I did see the same dentist my entire life. And it really motivated me. What a great industry this was. I always had a great time there. They were always friendly. They had the same team forever. It was so awesome. So yeah, I'm here in the big island of Hawaii. So if you put all the islands together, we're the biggest one. They pile up and equal the big island. So we're where the volcano is.
Oh, good. Well, let's keep that volcano quiet.
It's pretty far away from me.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. Well, it is a great industry to be in. I feel so lucky to be in it and to be able to talk about dentistry all day. So tell them a little bit about what you do, what your specialty is as far as helping dentists.
Sounds good. Well, I've been a virtual dental coach since day one. Yeah, people said
That's
it wouldn't work, and it's definitely worked. And I knew that there were plenty of people to go in office. I wanted to do something different. I don't really like living out of hotels and things like that. So I have been virtually getting my eyes on your practice through, screen sharing and other things. So it's been a cinch for me. I just, started off by just helping office managers and dentists all over town while I was working in the dental office for 20 years. And then I decided to go out and own my own business. Awesome. People know me as finding the missing revenue in their practice and making $500 more a day on tomorrow's schedule. So that's kind of what I'm known for, and that's per employee. But I'm just very passionate about dentistry. Coaching.
Yeah, well, we can feel it. I can feel it. It's really awesome. So we're talking about the September Slump. Industry wide, obviously, we don't need to tell anybody that September is slow. It's just one of those things. And so what have you've been you were in a practice for 20 years, you're helping practices. What have you noticed about this phenomenon? And I've asked this question to every single person that's on the show for this topic of what do you think it's attributed to? Because I think there's a lot of things, but.
For sure. I mean, September doesn't necessarily have to happen. It doesn't happen when offices are very busy. They're on the beach and summer's their busy time or what have you, going into the fall. But for the most part, it comes from lack of action. So we all know what's going to happen, but then nobody does anything until the schedule falls apart. And by then it's too late, right? When you're marketing, when you're talking to patients or reactivating, it takes time to get them to look at their schedule. They might be booked a couple of weeks. So you want to take action early on in August, right? Get your use it or lose it benefit letter out in advance, because otherwise everybody's calling you in December. We want them to fill that month. You could focus on people who they're not involved in school. They're not college kids or moms that have to do the parent teacher meetings and things like that. So think about when you are scheduling, who should I put in that schedule? Where should my marketing spend be done earlier to be on top of this? So the bigger your call list is the easiest to fill your month. So a lot of offices believe that, we only need to be booked 2 days or 2 weeks. But really, I like my clients to be booked, 3 to 6 months with a same day opening every single day. So we have a big ASAP list, right? Yeah. So we got to take action early on, right? You got to keep that hopper full with the phone ringing, getting your marketing campaigns out, whether that's your email or however you do it. You guys have an unscheduled treatment list. Everybody has that. So we really should be focusing on that in the summer.
Yeah, that's some really great advice for sure. I love focusing on that unscheduled treatment list. I think obviously that's what we do a lot at Dental Intelligence with our morning huddle, but that's some really great advice. So one of the things that we haven't really focused on very much is, and I had talked about it actually earlier in a podcast with doing a deep dive podcast with a doctor that was on, and we were talking about cancellations and no-shows. And I think a lot of times, just like you said, if people are listening to this podcast and it's maybe a little too late now and your schedule has fallen apart, like obviously great. That's awesome to fill the schedule with unscheduled treatment. But how do you advise your practices to reduce cancellations and no-shows? Because it has such a huge effect on the production of the practice.
Correct. So your no-show rate should be less than 5% per provider. So per hygienist, per doctor. And really, it's about creating value for the appointment. So it's a lot harder to reactivate patients than it is to get them to value it face-to-face. So how are you going to create value with them? What does that patient actually want? And how are we going to emphasize that appointment? So one thing I have people do is just ask the person. So we're going to schedule them, and then we just ask, is there any reason that you may not be able to make this appointment on September 3rd at 2:00? And they say, well, I could get called into work. Well, that's great. So we know you have an appointment September 3rd at 2, or whatever, 1 hour long. Can you get coverage for somebody else to cover you in case you get called in for that hour? Right? Like, people don't think of this. So I think locking them in or finding a different date, because you're expressing the importance. I need you to show up or I won't be able to get you back in for a couple months, 2-3 months. So we're expressing that, it's not easy. Yeah. Another thing that people do is when you go on the online booking, they don't take control over that local med and things like that. They're not monitoring it. So what's happening is it looks like you can get in any half an hour of the day, right? It's opening. So if they go online, they're like, oh, I can cancel because there's so many openings. So y'all should be having somebody that manages that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Control it. Once it gets booked, open up another. Don't look like you're free just anytime, any day. We know that we're kind of working them in. And we can take care of an emergency pretty easily. But I think it's important for perception too. If you have so many openings on your schedule, I just don't recommend that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point, and something that we hear about on Local Med, and also Modento also by that we are going through rebranding, calling it engagement.
Okay.
But we have perfect day, the ability to do perfect day schedule with that now, and that's kind of what, that's the goal, right? Is to block and not allow to those patients to see that, and that's not something we've talked about. It's super, it goes against that urgency that you're trying to create in the practice, so they can get online and just book whenever they want. That's some really great follow through in that thought process. I really, really like that. And I love that you are, bringing up, just making sure that gets done. That's really great. And bringing up the value in the practice. I have so many, I mean, I'm totally guilty of this as a hygienist, of like just saying, okay, well, we'll just see ya. Let's just see it. We'll see you on August 6th. Like, that's when we've got you scheduled next, and I just don't talk about driving home the point of like, oh, make sure you come or call us before or any of that. Like, those conversations never happened with me. And I know I'm not alone. So,
well, and we've recorded thousands and thousands of calls, so we know that most likely the front desk is saying something like, it's okay, when would you like to come in next, right? Like, we're not even taking charge of our schedule. So it's very important to act shocked and like it's a big deal. And is there any way you can keep it? We've got to try and switch them to come, right? To know that they can get their nails done another time or whatever, instead of, oh, my hairdresser can finally get me in. Seriously, your health is less important than your hair. So it's so important that, we do create this value. And so they understand it's their health and it's connected to their heart and things like that. But most of the time it's, we've got to convert that phone call to make it not so easy to get right back in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some good advice, because I know that a lot of people coming into September, I mean, at least preparing your team, right? So if your team doesn't have a good talk track or good information on how to handle those cancellations and no shows, this would be the time, right, to like prepare them to go up against September when people start to cancel. And call Heidi. She'll help you do that.
If you really always close Labor Day week, or closed, high no show, where you could cram 4 or 5 days, work days into 2 days, take time off.
Yeah.
If you know for a fact, it's like you work in an area that's nothing but college kids or whatever, and it's just a hard time to book. If you can't ever, make it happen, then just take vacation that week. Flights are a great price that week.
Yeah. I definitely, we've mentioned this before, but I think it bears to be mentioned again in a different podcast, that for sure, I think a lot of times we think that we're going to take December off, right? When really December is probably the busiest time, and maybe we should be taking more time off in September. It definitely is a change of thought process. I'm not like, that's not a popular opinion, but it's definitely one to think about, especially if you're feeling like we should just close the office in September and work a couple more days in December. Yeah. Really great. So you have an amazing expertise on like team leadership, and you've done that personally in a practice. So that being said, what advice, I guess, do practices, we're going to be talking about in the future, downtime, and what do practices do to cultivate a create team while they have downtime? And we've kind of talked a lot about it from like a production standpoint and like a leadership standpoint, but I guess I'm really interested to know what you advise, or what ideas like you could think of to help employees with downtime and like contributing to the practice.
And keeping them off their cell phones? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh gosh. So, within your job description should say, if there's open time, these are my tasks. Each person in the practice should have a key performance indicator, or something they're managing and monitoring. You can always turn it into some sort of team meeting. You could turn it into, hey, if there's open time, this is what I need done. But everybody should know what they're supposed to do when a patient happens to not show up, or you're absolutely free. What we find most people doing is hanging out in the sterile, right?
Yeah.
They're wiping down counters, they're reorganizing something. And sometimes that has to be done. But for the most part, everything should be kept up on, because we need to actually build the practice. So whether you can record some social media reels, or talk to some other businesses around town to market your business, post-op calls, care cards. I mean, we're not doing enough to wow our patients on how special they are. So, cards aren't going out anymore because we're a paperless world. But being in a paperless world means it's pretty special to get a card or something in the mail.
I read
I got mail.
All the mail that comes to me, I read it now. So
yeah. So actually, paper's kind of coming back. But having even if we're analyzing or tracking things, or coming up with ideas of what can we do to improve these numbers, whether that is per hour, per day, per new patient. I mean, just anything that could improve the business. It's not just going, how many new patients did we get this month? It's how many good ones did we get? How many do we love? And we want more of them. Where did they come from? How did we achieve gaining that quality of new patient? I think just really digging into the details on things, even if it has to do with, we're just tracking who walked out the door without scheduling. I mean, we can always look at it and say, we did pretty good, 8 out of 10, but these 2 didn't schedule. Well, I want to know a little more. I want to know everything that happened during those appointments. Who said what during this appointment? Because what we'll find is, oh my gosh, we were double booked. I barely gave them the time of day. And then I wasn't prepared because the assistant didn't put in what we did, and treatment plan wasn't ready, and there's chaos. And we discover where we need to kind of slow down and give better customer service. So sometimes just looking into it, or we realize, every person coming from this particular hygienist or this particular front desk is walking out. We got to figure out why. How can we support them and make them successful? Maybe we need to role play. Maybe they're totally confusing them. Maybe they really don't know what to say. So I can tell you all, as coaching teams all over the world, the number one concern team members say about treatment planning is they don't know what to say. And what if they can't answer the question that the patient has? So I think it's important to do case studies with your team and help them understand everything about it. So they can gain confidence, or maybe they watch the doctor talk about treatment a little bit so they understand it better. Because we are training a lot of people that have no dental experience in the front.
I love that. And that's something that I could talk about forever. I'm super passionate about, but I think we assume that, the dentist assumes that everybody, especially if you have multiple doctors, right? People practice differently from one another, right? And I love, as a hygienist, I loved the staff meetings that we had when we would pull up an x-ray and he would talk us through the diagnosis and why he would do it. And even as someone in the practice who has more knowledge than everybody else, I loved that. And I feel like what a great use of downtime to walk through some case studies. That's such a great advice. Oh my gosh. I just lost I wanted to talk to you about something else. That whole thing was super, super great. I loved all the advice. I know.
I tend to talk fast.
No, I know. I lost my train of thought, and I wish I could go back to my recording and listen to it. But with that being said, it really is. This is a great time when you do have downtime, to create a team that doesn't just want to come in and show up and work and then leave. And again, back to those case studies, I think that's a great way to encourage them. Oh, I remember what it was. I've heard, personally, and I've also heard other people where they assign other tasks to downtime tasks, right, to their staff members. And a lot of times, they've got they're in charge of a room, right? They've got some certain tasks that they're in charge of in sterilization, especially assistants. But their tasks kind of are only pertained to what their immediate job is. or they have like a general, like, hey, if you have downtime, go through this list, right? And it's kind of for everyone. But as you were
Mhm.
talking, I was thinking, that is such a great idea to just say, hey, Sharon, like you're in charge of the social media posts and you need to do so many a week. And this is your job, right? And
Yeah.
so that's such a great idea to make it like individual and outside of the scope, because then they're not just involved in
Yeah.
that, in dental assisting, or they're not just involved in reminders and confirmations. They're involved in something beyond their job.
They love it. They love to learn. They love to do something different. They love to be creative. So part of this is actually listening to them too and figuring out what skills they would be best. There's so many dentists that they're like, I'll talk to them and they'll say, oh, well, I put her on social media because she doesn't have one. And so I figured she could use the practice. It's like, she doesn't have one. She's very anti-social media. So I probably would not pick that person to do that. You know what I mean? So
Right.
and they're wondering why it's not getting done. Right. So
Yeah.
figure out what,
Or just going out and going to businesses. I mean, I can think of one
yeah,
person that we work with, that like, she loves to just like go out to eat at local restaurants. She loves like to like visit and she would be the perfect person to say, here's some business cards. Every time you go somewhere, share the good news, right? That so good. I love that advice. That's some good advice. Well, our gosh, a half an hour goes by so fast. And I could talk to you for a long time. So what the question that we ask all of our guests on the show, and it's because growth is so important to dental intelligence, and it also means something so different to everyone else. So you've helped a lot of practices grow, and we want to know, what does growth in dentistry mean to you?
Mm. It depends what your vision is for your own life. Some people want to just donate to charity. Other people want to travel. Some people are pure businessmen, right? But for me, it would be creating a lifestyle for you and your family, and helping the most people be healthy, right? So many of these offices are just scheduling their schedule like a Tetris game, and it's not really going to reach your vision. It's going to create chaos in the practice, going to create burnout, going to create team members that are mad at each other, things like that. So it's super important to hire right and have the team support your vision for your practice, because that's what's going to catapult your business and always have it on a forward motion. There are some dentists that live in fear, right? Oh, I can't go on vacation, or somebody will poach my staff. It's like, this is not what we need. You really have to have faith that you're doing the best you can. You're living, you're making it a win-win-win. It's good for the patients, good for the staff, good for yourself. And I think just creating the lifestyle you want, working the hours you want, and donating, or donating a portion and serving people, I always feel comes back tenfold.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. Creating a lifestyle that you want. And more than likely, when you do that for yourself, you'll attract people that will come work for you that want that same lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, it's been such a pleasure, Heidi. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. It's been so great. Heidi, if people want to get a hold of you, where can they reach you?
I have a lot of different areas. So if you go to my website, coachheidimount.com, it has a lot of things on there. It has a store, it has a reserve a call, a complimentary practice analysis, things like that. But if you want to just grab 10 secrets to increasing tomorrow's revenue, you can go to coachingdentist.com. Dentist is singular, so coachingdentist.com, and grab what you want there. I also had a #1 bestseller book called Finding the Missing Revenue. It's Hidden Treasures, Finding the Missing Revenue in Your Dental Practice. You can find it on Amazon or on my website. It's just my book tab. I have a lot of those KPIs and leadership in that book, but most of all, I have a Blackwater scuba diving story that you need to hear.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to add those things to our show notes, the book, both of those websites. And then also for those of you that want to get a demo of dental intelligence and get $50 gift card, I'll put that link on the show notes as well. So this has been Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast. Again, thank you so much to Heidi Mount for joining us. And thank you to our marketing department for all their work on this podcast. I'm Katie Polson. Keep growing.